Very happy, yes, very
Yeah,
happy.
good stuff.
Yep.
Right, good morning, everyone.
Can you hear me? Can you hear
Um,
me too?
yeah, loud and clear,
Good, thank you.
loud and clear.
Yep.
Good stuff. So guys, as per, a really warm, happy morning to you. It's sunny in England. Again, we're joined from all corners of the world, which is crazy. I mean, every single time we do this, we're inundated by support and just interest from everyone. So thank you again. As we do every time, we're going to start with a video which we put together, or Phos put together for sort of promoting light and how important it is to us. So Shelley and Marianne will just pop this on and then we'll get stuck into it. But yeah, if you guys enjoy, it should be a nice little taster.
It starts here. It all starts here. Infinite surfaces turn to it. Uncountable textures depend on it. Unselfish, humble, consistent. Inseparable from our condition. Our first morning companion, our last associate at close of play. Revenant. Creator. And what do we ask of it? On, off. Rise, set. A boundless force, far from binary. Limited words talk of limitless potential. These expanses we occupy, these spaces we construct and anoint our homes are built and composed just to contain it. This intangible blueprint that runs through all things. We gather round it. Communicate through it. So what stuff is this that warms us to the core? We have bottled the storm and let it rumble, conquered the lightning and cradled its heat in our hands. Awe has turned to control. The infinite possibilities of the world outside exist within our grasp. Your space, your creation. It starts here. Light starts here.
Light. So guys, again, good morning, and so excited about this one. We've got the incredible Marianne from Dulux and the lovely Dr Shelley again. And yeah, so as you can see from our page, for those who have sort of been with us throughout the entire journey, you'll probably be bored of this spiel, but we're actually a company called Phos. We sort of make really small, powerful architectural light fittings. And I joined the company about 3 years ago because my older brother kept talking about the amazing world of light. And I thought, how amazing can it be? And after 3 years, I'm absolutely obsessed with it. I keep meeting incredible people that are so knowledgeable and obsessed with it as well. And it's just insane learning about the industry and how impactful it is. You know, the world of color, the world of light quality and everything. It's just fascinating. And, you know, what we decided to do was to set up an independent neutral arm of Phos called the Light Tribe. And the idea of the Light Tribe is to be a research platform that connects the latest research to the designers that are building the world that we live in. And the idea is literally to not be, biased by being a brand or anything like that. It's supposed to be a neutral content generating platform for designers to get in touch with researchers. The industry is fragmented, and to have the knowledge from, even Dr. Shelley and Marianne and all these amazing people doing insane research. The idea is to have one-stop shop to get all this amazing information. And as you can see, we've got our new logo. So this is the unveiling of our official website and everything. So the Light Tribe, lighttribe.co.uk is our website. And through there, you can find our Instagram and YouTube channels where we're curating playlists of different content and stuff. So, this webinar will be put up on there, and all the other previous webinars, in case you missed them, will be there as well. And all future content and research from any part of the industry, we hope to put up there so that we can literally change the spaces we're building for the better. So, really excited about it. This one here is, I'm actually going to be a bystander on this one. This is all Dr. Shelley. So I'm really looking forward to that. I mean, this is yeah, it's an amazing talk about sort of color and the impact of it. So I'll hand over to Dr. Shelley in a moment to introduce Marianne, because she's yeah, far more in tune with these two have been working behind the scenes on this for a fair while now, so it makes sense to do that. But I'll be tuning off my video and my microphone and joining the audience, and then I'll also be fielding all of the chat as well. So at the end, we're going to be having a little Q&A, so any questions, please type it into the chat. I'll log that, and then at the end of this discussion between these two, great minds, we'll air it, and we'll have a deeper chat. But Shelley, I'll leave it to you to introduce Marianne, and yeah, be listening closely. See you shortly.
Well, thank you. What a pleasure. Marianne and I have been pondering this. I've known Marianne for a number of years now, and always just so impressed and inspired by what she does. So I'm just going to begin by saying that Marianne is a remarkably creative individual herself, has had a fascinating life so far, but is now one of the pioneering researchers at Dulux, which actually started in 1927. And Dulux actually stands for durable luxury. And Dulux is now part of a global consortium called ADCO, Nobel. Sorry, I never know how to pronounce that. And essentially, they're passionate about well-being and the way that we can bring colour and surface into our world today. And we're going to finish off by talking about some of the amazing technologies that they're using, for example, for new surfaces in hospitals, new sort of painted electrical surfaces. We're going to be talking about that in a minute or two. But essentially, the way the visual system works is it combines colour and texture to create our experience of the world. And colour, we only get colour because of the impact of light. So we're going to talk a little bit about colour and how it makes us feel, and actually how Marianne's work, this pioneering research and colour forecasting work they does, actually really in a fascinating way tracks the philosophy and culture and attitudes in our world. And that shift, through the work that she does, she's able to shift that and not only offer us colours which reflect our mood, but also in an interesting way shape our mood. So we're going to begin perhaps with that. Marianne, tell us a little bit about the colour forecasting process and I suppose what's happening at the moment in terms of what we're going to be seeing in our decorator shops now. One other thing to just mention is that probably since lockdown, I'm sure it's got even better, but the colour industry, actually, the home decorating sector, 925 million in the UK. That's a whole lot of paint cans, and so you're probably looking at a room right now, you're going, oh, I could probably that could probably do with a lick of paint. Well, Marianne and Dulux are the people to talk to about that. So Marianne, perhaps tell us about forecasting, what we're going to be seeing in the shops, and how you decide that.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, thank you so much for your wonderful accolade about me being a leading researcher. I mean, I am part of an enormous team of eminent researchers, and I would probably describe myself as a passionate advocate and somebody and a communicator, and I dip into that research and help to bring it to life. So thank you for that. I don't know if my brain is I can't take credit for all of that, but we do some extraordinary research. And one of the most interesting things that I get involved in is our global colour trend research. And one of the things that I don't think people it's a hidden gem. And so basically, every year, we gather together a group of people who represent each of our markets in the world. So we have in 26 countries, we have 80 markets. And we ask those countries to nominate somebody who is doing something extraordinary in either the field of design or the field of social economics or the field a cultural field. It could be an artist, it could be a designer, an architect, it could be an influencer. And we ask them to send somebody who's saying something quite different about how we are living our lives now and in the future. And we invite them to our aesthetic centre in Amsterdam, where that is headed up by the most extraordinary woman called Helene van Gent, and she is the head of the aesthetic centre. And we ask our experts to talk about the biggest influences, the things that are going to have the biggest influences on our lives and the way that we live them in the future. What do we perceive as the new luxury? What are we spending our money on? What are we doing? What are we not doing? What are we worried about? And they have a 3-day seminar. And then after that, we take that story of the human condition and distill it into palettes of colours that will help us live better lives and help us deal with what's happening to us as human beings. So we distill this sort of global narrative into a palette of colours for the built environment that will help us and give us what we want and what we need from our homes and the places that we work and live in the future. And this is something that I think people imagine that trend forecasting is literally going onto WGSN and looking at what's happening on the catwalk and what's happening in furniture design. It's so much more than that. It's so much more than that. It's about the human condition, about what we want and what we need from the built environment. And colour is so much more than just a palette of great colours that go together. They have to be that, of course, because otherwise they don't sell. You know, if we don't have great colours that tell great stories, we can't sell the great products that we make. So it's all infused in the success of what we make. But the research is not what you imagine. It's about human beings.
So tell us a little bit about what the trends are coming forward then. What are we going to be looking at next?
Well, what we're looking at, what we've noticed, we've been doing trend forecasting in a body of work called Colour Futures for the last 18 years. And we've noticed, and this Colour Futures body of work, it identifies a really important colour for the year, which we call Colour of the Year, and colour palettes that capture sort of moods of the moment and what we want and need from our environments. And we have noticed over the last 5 years that we have been moving towards nature-inspired, soft, nature-inspired neutrals. So away from quite bright colours and into nature-inspired neutrals. Reconnected with nature, with the great outdoors. So blues and greens, colours that are immediately familiar to us, and colours that connect us together. So it's this moving away from visual noise almost and clutter in a 24/7 always on environment towards colours that soothe us and calm us down. It's like the antidote to all of the noise that's going on out there and all of the things that demand our attention. So that's been very interesting. We're reconnecting with nature, not on a physical level as well, but through colour.
That's really, apologies, there was a little bit of a phone glitch there. So perhaps you can just talk us through some of the trends that you're noticing in the COVID world. So we've got the idea of people spending more time indoors, and can you just talk us through a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, we are. One of the things that's happened is we're spending more time at home, and we've suddenly realised that our homes are a bit of a mess, and we've decorated them possibly for other people. So decorated them for other people to come in and go, wow, that's gorgeous. And a sense of style has been driven by the perceived idea of style out there. And now we're living in our homes more. We're asking ourselves, what do we really want and need from this space? You know, am I a morning person? Do I need to be, energized and uplifted in my bedroom in the morning? Am I somebody who wants to draw my family together and so we eat and talk together? Do I need to sleep better in my bedroom? What am I wanting from my home? And so we've seen people start to decorate their homes and their environments with much more consideration about the way those spaces make them feel, and that there's a different outcome, so it's not just a beautiful living room, it's a living room in which I can switch off and think and read a book and not be distracted by other things. And so we're asking ourselves much more of our decoration. We are, again, as we've noticed, the world has moved towards these nature-inspired colours. We are living in Phos walls that seem to be, it doesn't matter how big that space is, we want it to be bigger. So we love blues and greens that melt away the barrier between the indoor and outdoor space. We love those receding colours. And we're starting to paint ceilings as well. So we're starting to put colour on the ceiling where we would have put colour on the walls that would have drawn them in. This idea that we look up and we enjoy that sort of fifth wall and colour on the ceiling. So there's some extraordinary things. I mean, it's so exciting. I mean, it's awful time, really. But in terms of colour and the power of colour and the power of light, of course, because light is simply visible, colour is visible wavelengths of light. In that terms, it is so exciting to be in colour and light at the moment.
So, I mean, that brings us on to something we chatted about before, which is to do with, well, there are two things here. One of them is to do with colours which change. I think you call them metameric colours, and tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, metameric colours are what we are obsessed in our industry in creating consistency of colour. So when you see colour on a sample here in the store, or you see it somewhere, it needs to look the same in everywhere you see it, and in the can and on the walls. And so that consistency of colour relies on a lot of things. Many of them human interactions. Literally cleaning the mixing machine and making sure that all the tinters are right. Will affect has in the past affected, maybe subtly the colour. And we have been working for years on colour consistency, and we've managed to get the most colour consistency across everywhere you see our colours. However, something really interesting is the colours that we seem to be loving at the moment are these colours. Our colour of the year this year is a colour called Tranquil Dawn. It's a beautiful, soft celadon blue-green. And when you see the colour in the morning or in different levels of light, and then in the evening, it looks like a completely different colour. It changes. It has this ability to change in a subtle change of light condition. And so it's not fixed. The colour doesn't seem to be fixed. It's fixed in paint. It's always going to be the same. But the way that the light just brings something else out of this colour is extraordinary. And so we're starting to look and experiment with metameric colours that aren't fixed, colours that in the past we would have gone, oh, we can't possibly use that. It's not a fixed colour. We can't fix it because we can't. It doesn't look the same it doesn't look as consistent across in light conditions. And actually, we're starting to look at these properties that were previously seen as faults, and see them as a potential boon, a potential, a positive thing in colour. And I love that idea. I love a disruption in the way that we look at it. That's the creative thing, isn't it? You disrupt and find something beautiful in the fault, in the thing that is perceived to be wrong or the fault. And so metameric colours.
I mean, we talked before about how our world is so uncertain at the moment, and colours which reflect that sort of mobility and that uncertainty is a really, really interesting concept. There was something else in your I know that you mentioned you've been working hard to for years, for generations, to make sure that your colours are sort of perfectly consistent. And one of the things that we talked about was the way that I think a phenomenon called like the IKEA grey. I mean, the advent of LEDs in our world has changed the way, obviously, because they give off, most of the people here will know, they give off particular parts of the spectrum. So they may look like they're white, but actually they have peaks of wavelengths, different peaks of wavelengths, a lot of them around the blue, for example. And I know that it'd be interesting to hear a bit more about how you use lights just to check how the colours are going to perform, because very often we're working with internal spaces or spaces which don't have natural light and are really relying on artificial light. Could you tell me more about that?
Well, coming back to metamerism, we would reject colours that wouldn't look good across different light consistencies. But when we're looking at those again. But one of the things, you go back to IKEA, is that before IKEA introduced an affordable, I mean, LED lighting's been around for a long time, and warm LEDs have been, but it was never affordable. And one of the things that IKEA did was made a pretty good but very affordable LED light available to everyone. And suddenly we saw this rise in greys, where grey had been the most awful colour for our light conditions in the UK, in the Northern Hemisphere. Light is cooler. And so these greys were dying. So we could see them in other countries, and we saw them coming through in European photography and how gorgeous they looked, and Americans, the USA and Manhattan apartments, and we just couldn't do it here. And then IKEA produced this £4 warm LED bulb that we could all, saved the energy, but also that part of the spectrum for us in paint and interiors was suddenly, wow, here was a colour that was non-challenging, that worked well with everything we had in our house. We could be toned up and toned down. You could have a pale grey, but it worked with everything. Became the new magnolia, and has become the new magnolia. And it's simply because of the light conditions. And that would never have happened with tungsten. Can you imagine what grey looks like with a yellow glow on it? It's revolting on every level. And suddenly to take out that yellow from grey, it was a revolution, an absolute revolution. And I think that even those, you can argue that an IKEA LED might not have the optimum, type of light for all colours.
Colour rendering.
Flipping, it's the colour rendering, but it's absolutely fantastic for the majority of us to unlock areas of the spectrum that we could never play with before. We were always with tungsten light. We were always locked in the warmer. I mean, that's just why magnolia was so popular, because it looked great when you turned on your table lamps at night. It doesn't look so great now, but it used to look great. And I think it's something we don't. There's so much more we can do with colour and light in harmony together, and it is the most exciting part of my job to explore.
Yeah. I mean, we talked also about surfaces, and in the past, sort of gloss and silk was kind of shiny, but now I think we're seeing a very different kind of aesthetic in the surface. And again, as I mentioned at the beginning, there are different pathways in the visual system which are dealing with luminosity and texture and hue. So that texture component is something that's really, really powerful and gives us some interesting, generates emotion in us. So tell us a bit. I think there's a new trend towards a different kind of surface now.
Oh, absolutely. So premium used to be a wipeable surface was what everybody wanted. So vinyl silk was a premium at one point. It was this idea of practicality over aesthetic. But as the years have progressed, and now we see that the premium aesthetic is dead flat. So the mattest matte you can get. And we've seen it in cars. I mean, I live over a recording studio, and the coolest cars arrive. You know that these guys are, really wealthy recording artists, and they arrive in a matte car, and you immediately go, "Oh, that is amazing." And what matte does to color is it absorbs light, doesn't reflect so much light. And so the colors that are created with matte, on a practical level, hides a multitude of sins and flaws on the wall, so you don't pick up the lumps and bumps. But on a color level, it makes colors come alive. So these gorgeous, deep, rich colors that, when they had a gloss surface to them, weren't really quite, they didn't look quite good enough unless you had an absolutely dead flat surface. Suddenly they look gorgeous. And so it's this, they're quiet as well. A matte surface, almost you can't hear it. There's something like this muffling of the intensity and shoutiness of a color. I mean, colors, when a color is shiny and it goes on the wall, or it has a slight reflect, it's like a naughty child in a room demanding attention, I think, sometimes. But the same color in a matte finish, oh crikey, it looks completely different, and it does something to you. It definitely has a sort of physical effect on you, in that you can admire it in a different way. It doesn't draw your attention. You sort of, it's like the gorgeous guy in a, you give him a silent glance.
Yeah. Bit of eye candy there. I mean, it's interesting the way that, optics in light is we're finding some similar things about new forms of diffusion. It used to be that kind of spotlights were the thing, but now, so with some beautiful asymmetric optics, you can have areas of sharpness, but also areas of diffusion, and glow seems to be something that people are seeking as well, which is just a really interesting parallel with what you're talking about with paint. And that leads me on nicely to some research that you're doing on migraines, because I know some lovely work on autism spectrum disorder, the way that sort of texture and color makes a big difference to the way they experience those conditions. And I just wondered if you could tell us a little bit about the work that you're doing on migraines, please.
Well, we're working with the Migraine Trust and with TIVA, who produce drugs for migraine sufferers. And the Migraine Trust came to us and said, one of the triggers for migraine is color, is intensity of color, and there have been some published papers about which colors tend to set off, have a negative effect on people with headaches, and so we built on that. We put together a survey, a big survey that the Migraine Trust put out, and it's extraordinary. It's actually incredible, and the results have come in, and we're going to publish them during Migraine Awareness Week in September. But we've known that an intensity and high saturation and higher LRV of certain colours, really makes, they're not very pleasant to look at. So incredibly bright reds and yellows tend to make all of us wince a little bit. I mean, they're great for drawing attention, but not so good for living with. And we knew that greens and blues in that green and blue spectrum were much more soothing and easy to live with, and for migraine sufferers as well. But what we didn't know was what kind of LRV value, or what kind of saturation, or how it worked with light, and what sort of how we as a paint company are going to create a palette of migraine friendly colors using the scant information we know. Basically, we asked people who had migraine and gave them selected palettes to choose from. And we had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people coming back on a study that it would have taken us years to do. And so in September, so with this information, we've created a beautiful palette of colours to help alleviate those horrible symptoms of migraines. I think 1 in 7 people have debilitating migraines that send them off to bed on a regular basis. What an awful thing, and what a wonderful thing that colour, and then the colour of paint could possibly help alleviate that. It won't cure it, obviously, but it will make it easier. And so that's the power of colour. And light, of course, is hugely important in that, because it is the LRV value and the saturation and the way that those colours are seen in certain lights that it's going to help. So watch out, September, we'll be publishing that. The Migraine Trust will be publishing that, and we will have a beautiful palette that we're testing out at the moment to share with the world, which is, how lovely is that? I mean, honestly, so my job is it's so lovely.
Actually, you mentioned another project that you're working on, which I think is fascinating, particularly in these times, which is paints. We talk about surface, but you were talking about special paints for hospitals which have sterilizing or antibacterial properties. Could you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, we have a product called SteriShield, and we painted the Nightingale Hospital with that. And it's one of those products that is extraordinary. It's easy to clean. It works beautifully on the walls, and it helps hospitals maintain that the environment in which patients can be at most protected. So these are kind of another hidden things that we're working on, and as a response to COVID, we're working on new products that will be better for people's homes, and so that we can use them in people's homes as well. So it's something that we have the technology, and we've been working on these for a long time, but that research has been stepped up. So I think color is one thing, and the property, if you can add those properties to wonderful colors, then you can create hospitals that aren't just practical spaces, they're beautiful as well. So having a great considered color in the ward in which you are recovering from an illness or an operation, and then you add the property of a SteriShield property, and then a scrub property, so that it's 50 times tougher than a standard emulsion. So you've got many properties built into a product that is amazing in terms of its sustainability and impact on the environment, but also the impact on the user. So we're constantly looking at how we can use the power of color allied with the product and the kind of properties within a product in order to make it the best it can be. And that's
I mean, that leads on to it sounds like the cupboards in your. I know you sit next to an amazing scientist, so it sounds like the cupboards in your office are just full of amazing kind of discoveries that haven't yet found a use. And one of the other things we mentioned just now was about electricity and surface, so paintable surfaces which can be conductive, and you suddenly end up with a paint which is more than the color again, as you were mentioning with the sterilite. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
We had one of our scientists, Professor Bogdan, was messing about, rummaging around through the drawers, because as you say, the drawers in a big organization will have lots of treasures in them. And he'd found some research that had been done a while ago and started to develop it, and created a paintable, almost a circuit board basically. So and this could be used for many things. So we're still experimenting with how this could be used. So it could be just literally, rather than chiseling out the walls to put in your lighting system with an LED system, you might just paint that onto the walls. You might use that paint to gather. So for example, with somebody who is a vulnerable person living in their home, that paint might be able to gather how the person is using their home or turning on light switches, or so it can make life easier. We're just working out, this is in our research and sort of playground of what could this be, how can we develop this, and so there are many uses at the moment for this type of paint, but we shall have to see what happens. But the guy I sit next to, his name's Ted Schumann. He's the head of innovation, and he always honestly has a top hat on his desk. And every day he'll pull something out. And it's interesting to sit as a creative next to somebody who's looking at things in a much more scientific way. The combination of art and science is what really unlocks the potential of extraordinary things, the rabbits that are in those hats.
Wow. Well, maybe that's a place to finish our conversation anyway. And perhaps I know that Xander's very kindly been sitting there quietly in the background, feeling the chat.
Yeah.
Could you?
Yeah,
I can't thank you
it,
enough, Marianne. I mean, we could go on for hours. I mean, we promised ourselves a bottle when this is all over, so that we can keep on this conversation. But
yeah,
I just want to respect other people's time. So
checking in with you guys every time I speak to you, like, oh, we had a good 3.5 hour conversation. I'm like, all right, with these webinars, we need like 10 of these to get through all the topics. So it's so awesome listening to you guys talk about it, and you're both so knowledgeable. It's fascinating, quite relieving as well to be an audience member and not in the hot seat for a bit. But yeah, we had a couple of quite good questions. The first one was from Suzanne, and she was asking whether matte can be used in every room, and sort of when should it not be used. Lisa said that it's not necessarily as easy to clean, and the higher the shine, the easier it is to clean. But I just wondered, Marianne, whether where should one use matte? Is it personal taste, or is it?
No, you can use matte everywhere. It depends what matte you are using. So you need to have a matte that has durable properties. So if you are a DIYer and at home doing your own house, I would choose a product called Easy Care. And this is 20 to 50 times tougher than a standard emulsion, but it's matte. And then in trade, so if you're doing a commercial space, you could use a diamond matte. We call it diamond matte, and this is it's honestly it's so tough. So it's durable, it looks beautiful, but you can wipe it, scrub it, doesn't go shiny. So it's about the properties of the paint. You can have matte anywhere you like, but you just have to choose the right kind of matte.
Awesome. So there's another, at the end where you were saying, it's beautiful that when science meets art, the sort of two hit it off spectacularly well. I heard a really beautiful expression about light being where science meets art, which I think is amazing. That the fact that you said, this IKEA grey, when an LED started offering up a bit sort of better light quality, you have to hire CRI and, more scope to include different colours or palettes. There's this beautiful expression that you had about hearing colour when you were talking about the matte of the cars of the sort of well-to-do recording artists and stuff. And I just love this idea of the, colour having energy almost, this matte, you said it was very quiet. And, I just wondered whether, do people experience that kind of feeling of colour differently? Like would matte to one person feel different to another person, or generally speaking is...
It's quite interesting that we have, there's a couple of photographs we have in our archive of photographs. And one of them is this very interesting space where it moves from a living dining room into a kitchen, into a hallway. And it's the same color in different sheen levels. And within that, there's high gloss and then dead flat matte. And as you move through the space, the way you feel, the energy that space, where the light bounces off the reflective surfaces, you feel much more energized. So what we did is we designed the space so when you're eating and talking and you want to actually sort of stimulate conversation and appetite, we used slightly shinier surfaces, a shiny surface on the table, shiny surfaces on the chairs, and it literally did. It gets you more energized. So that's a combination of color and sheen is really interesting. I mean, we need to do a lot more study on it, but it was
and light source, obviously.
Yeah.
I mean, this was natural light. Actually, it was interesting. It was natural light, but it worked the same at night. But these surfaces, the way that the light pinged around, it did wake you up. But when there was no sheen level, it was much calmer to be in that space, and everything sort of was calmer. Yeah, it's interesting.
There's some interesting work about how the color of a wall affects your experience of the warmth in the room. So if you have warm tones, you tend to put studies show that you put the thermostat up by 4 degrees on average. So a cool blue may make you feel comfortable, calmer, but it's not necessarily so good for the environment, because on average you feel the temperature has to drop by 4 degrees before you feel it's cold in a warm room. In fact, down to 11 degrees before you feel it's cold. Whereas in a room that's painted a warm color, you feel as if you don't feel cold. Essentially, you don't feel cold at 11 degrees. Whereas in a warm room, in a cool painted room, at 15 degrees, you feel it's a bit cool, a bit chilly. In a warm painted room, you can get down to 11 degrees and you still feel it's fine. So, it's interesting and there are some interesting things about time. So in a brightly or in a warm painted room or a brightly coloured room, you tend to believe that time is passing more quickly, and in a cool blue or green room, you tend to feel that time is passing more slowly. So there's some really interesting work on the kind of behavioural dimensions of the colour in your space.
It is. It is crazy that when you look at the colour black, a black car in the sunshine, that it heats up, right? White reflects all the light, which is why you get white, and black absorbs all of it. So it's absorbing that energy. And I think quite often, because light is such a normal part of our daily lives, we forget about the power and the energy within it. It is energy. I guess the strange thing is when you I guess have a lower quality light source, you miss out on so much of that sort of power that the palette might offer. How important do you feel, Marianne, the quality of the light source is within a space? Because so often people will, and as you say, they'll go for sort of the more cost-effective light sources. But with that, there's a massive trade-off, and the beautiful paints that you'll see at Dulux will look completely different in a home that's lit with a low color rendering index. So how do you try and advise people on the quality of the light, and how does the quality of the light affect the experience of the color?
Xander, you're going to owe me a bottle of wine for this, but light is everything when it comes to color. They had a great question yesterday. I've got a tiny little north-facing kitchen, and I want to paint it a dark, moody color. Well, only if you've got great artificial light. If you haven't got layered lighting and you can't control it, it's just going to look grim. If you're just relying on a solitary pendant in the middle of the room, you're not considering the lighting, then whatever you do in that room is going to look revolting. However, you could paint that tiny little room the darkest blue or black or any kind, and it would look amazing. But it's the lighting, and it's all about the lighting, and it is one of the it was one of the best things I ever did in this because I moved into this new place. Best thing I ever did was invest in a beautiful lighting plan, because it just makes everything great. And at a flick of a switch, me and my beloved will sit and have a glass of wine, or we can have an animated chat about important things by turning the lights into something different. So color, that one doesn't exist without the other.
Yeah. That is. We've got a statement from Cora College saying, "Can you please tell your speakers this webinar is fascinating? More, please. So interesting. You can listen to this all day." And literally being an audience member as well, I agree with that. It's so awesome talking to you guys. So we've got a couple of other ones. So we kind of is the LED light the reason why pure brilliant white is going out of fashion? That's from Eduardo.
It's an interesting one, that one, because. It's an interesting one. I don't know. We will have to. It could be. I don't know. But the pure brilliantness of white, it makes us. It's great in commercial settings because it makes small spaces seem bigger, and it illuminates It will increase the illumination in a space without having to add extra energy. Like we could do a product called Light and Space, which reflects twice as much light as a standard emulsion, so it reduces the energy levels. However, it can be, pure brilliant white can be quite, it's a bit like sucking a lemon sometimes visually. It can be quite domestic house. And so these softer whites, chalky whites, I mean, we do 150 whites, you know, flipping heck. And that's just, these are probably ones we aim. And we're constantly bringing out new whites that are very subtle, will subtly change in different light conditions. So it's a hugely important one. And I don't really know the answer to it. Maybe it's because we want quieter spaces.
But there's been some interesting research on productivity and colour in offices, and they did some work with people who had proofreading in a red room, and they made fewer mistakes. They felt as if the space was a bit intrusive, but they made fewer mistakes. And they felt as if they'd like to work in a white room, but actually they made more mistakes, and their energy levels fluctuated more across the day in a white room. So, I mean, that's just a little kind of snippet of information about how colour can affect those. I mean, so white has some other sorts of dimensions to it too.
Yeah, and it can also.
Sorry. No, go on, Marianne. Go on.
So white is the ultimate sort of blank canvas, but I think it stops us in our tracks sometimes. It just sort of keeps us in a holding pattern because we don't know what to do. We lose our ability to make decisions because it's almost I don't know what to do because you're making a commitment, and I think lots of people find it difficult to make a commitment to a colour or I mean, you've got a big white background with ceiling here, and I looked at it, thought, well, it's absolutely lovely, but I know it looked great with the colour, but you're just in a holding pattern with white, and like you say, you can't focus because it's just the blank canvas. What's the most difficult thing any of us ever do is write the first line of your magnus opus, or the first thing. Taking the first step is always the most difficult thing, and white demands that we take the first step. So maybe that's why.
I mean, there's so many questions flying in. It's I'm just slightly aware of the time, and I know we said that we were going to keep it to sort of around 30 to 40 minutes, and we've got a few of our bits and pieces up here. Obviously, at the bottom, we've got Dr. Shelley's Age of Light Innovations, which has got some amazing stuff. The Dulux page as well. We actually haven't got it on here, but if you email the email address that we've been working on with this, and the email you would have got from the webinar. So it's lighttribe@phos.co.uk. We'll take any questions that you've got. Please do follow us as well on the platforms that we show here. Our YouTube will have, as I say, links to all of our recordings, and you'll be able to watch this again in full and refresh your memory and all the little nuggets of information that have been reeled off. There's so many of them. And then Instagram as well. And the idea is, as I say, this is a neutral platform, and it offers up an amazing opportunity to have discussions like this. And the first time we've been able to be an audience member, and it's just been amazing to sort of not be locked into the presenting, but being able to literally listen and have your mind get inspired about all this stuff. And it really is unbelievable. And I think there is a massive interlink between light and color, and research coming out. Was it September you said you might be releasing that, Marianne?
Yeah.
Some of the research.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Well, I really look forward to listening to that and reading it, or whatever format it comes out at. But guys, thank you so much again for logging in and tuning in again, all corners of the world. So many of you again. It's all slightly overwhelming this still, but Shelley and Marianne, thank you so much as well. Absolutely amazing listening to you guys. And as I say, if there's anything that you'd like to sort of pose any questions, do email lighttribe@phos.co.uk. But wherever you are in the world, I hope it's sunny. It is in England. And hopefully things will start calming down with COVID-19 and we can all sort of frolic around in the parks and stuff. But thank you so much. Go and get your diet of light, as Shelley says. And wish you all an amazing rest of your day. And Marianne and Shelley, I don't know if you'd like to say anything before we head off.
Just thank you.
Awesome. Well, look, guys, thank you so much again. Take care, everyone. And I look forward to hopefully seeing you in the next one. Take care.